I never thought that after dedicating my entire life, my time, and even my assets to my children, they'd be capable of erasing me from their big day, as if I were an uncomfortable stain on their new, elegant world. And when I finally made the only decision I had left, cutting off their access to my money, they called me selfish. I'm glad you're here. Stay until the end, and if you're reading these words, tell me what city you're watching my story from. I really want to know how far it has reached, and how many people out there have ever felt the way I do. My cell phone slipped from my hands as soon as I heard my daughter Jessica's voice say something that tore me up inside. Obviously, I'm not inviting Mom. Imagine how embarrassing she'll be in front of Matthew's family, she said with a coldness that chilled me to the bone, as if she were talking about tossing out an old rag that was no longer useful. I stood frozen in the hallway of my own house, the phone lying on the floor, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my mouth. 64 years lived, 8 as a widow, 38 being a mother to that girl, only to realize now that to her, I'm an embarrassment. The conversation continued on the other end of the line. Jessica was talking to someone, probably Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, the one who thinks she's so influential just because she posts pictures on social media of the house I bought for my son, Rob. You know, Mom, Stephen will think we're a bunch of ... Well, you know, Matthew has enough to deal with just accepting where we come from. Where we come from. Has she already forgotten that it was thanks to that that she was able to study architecture at the most expensive university in the country? That because of my hard work, getting up before dawn for years to build my real estate business, she can now pick and choose her clients. My legs felt weak, and I leaned against the wall, the same one where I hung the wallpaper she chose when we redecorated the house last year to make it look more chic. Now it felt like a mockery. Every corner screamed of the money I earned, with the sweat of my brow, the same money she squanders, as if it grows on trees. Besides, you know, Mom doesn't know how to behave. She'll show up in one of those tacky dresses from the flea market. She'll talk too loudly. She'll tell embarrassing stories from when we were kids. Jessica let out a little laugh that made my blood boil. Matthew's family is very sophisticated. His brother Stephen is a diplomat. His mom was Miss Universe in the 80s. Can you imagine my mom trying to chat with those people? The receiver was still there, but I couldn't move. Each sentence pierced me like a knife. And to think this was the same little girl who used to run to my bed when she had nightmares. The one who would hug me crying when the other girls made fun of her worn-out shoes. The one who promised me that when she grew up, she would always take care of me. Rob agrees with me too, Jessica continued. He also thinks it's better if Mom doesn't come. It's going to be awkward enough explaining why Dad isn't here. We don't want any more drama. Rob, my boy, the one I carried in my arms almost until he was 2 because he was always sick. The same one whose entire law degree I paid for, and whose first condo I bought him when he married Vanessa. Both of them, my own children, had already condemned me as an embarrassment. Jessica's laughter seeped through the empty walls of the house, as cold as marble. The good thing is, she won't even notice. Lately, she's so out of it, so, you know, getting on in years, and in that moment, I felt something inside me truly break. It wasn't just that they were excluding me, or that they were ashamed of me. It was the way they saw me as a useless old woman who no longer understood anything. They thought I was some dotty old lady they could just push aside, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. I wasn't some clueless grandma like they thought. I was Teresa Miller, the same woman who turned a $5,000 loan into an empire of 20 properties, the one who raised her children alone since Charles died, working day and night so they never wanted for anything. I carefully placed the phone on the table, as if it were made of fine glass. My mind had already gone into crisis mode, like in those days when I had to deal with debtors or contractors who thought they could pull a fast one on me just because I was a woman. I learned a long time ago that revenge is a dish best served cold, and that patience is the sharpest blade a thinking woman can wield. I went straight to my study, that little room full of folders and documents that my children always avoided, as if it smelled of gunpowder. Mom's boring paperwork, Jessica used to say as a child. How ironic that such boring paperwork had paid for all her luxuries for as long as she could. Remember, I turned on the computer and began to review every dollar I had given them in the last 5 years. Jessica, her condo in Beverly Hills, $400,000. Rob, his little house in Brentwood, $600,000. Jessica again, her BMW, $300,000. Rob, the wedding expenses with Vanessa, $200,000. Jessica, her master's degree in Europe, $500,000. And so the list went on, as if it would never end. Each transfer was accompanied by a sweet little phrase that now made me laugh. Mom, it's for my future. Vanessa's expecting a baby. We need more space. It's just a loan. I'll pay you back in 6 months. 6 months that never came. Loans that were never repaid. Investments that only made them more comfortable. As I went through the numbers, it came back to me clearly how this story began. It was 3 years after Charles passed. I was barely breathing, trying to make sense of being alone for the first time in my life. Jessica came to me crying, her eyes swollen. Mom, I got offered a really good job, but I need to look more professional. Do you think you could lend me a little to update my wardrobe? That little ended up being $30,000, just for new clothes. But I had said yes because seeing her with tear-filled eyes broke my heart. Because deep down, I wanted her to have everything life had denied me. That was my first big mistake, thinking that loving was the same as shelling out money. Then came Rob with his same old story. Mom, Vanessa and I want to start a family, but this condo is getting too small for us. Could you help us out with the down payment? Just the down payment. We'll cover the rest. And of course, as always, I agreed. 6 months later, they were back with their hands out. It's just that the monthly payments are tough, and Vanessa had to quit her job because of the pregnancy. To make a long story short, I ended up paying for their entire house. It was always the same. They'd show up with their sad little faces, a story of urgency, and a promise that this would be the last time. After this, we won't ask you for anything else, Mom, just until we get on our feet. Sweet words wrapped in cold hugs and obligatory kisses, but I so foolish, confused that need with sincere affection. I felt like a good mother when, in reality, I was just their ATM with feelings. They'd arrive, push the right buttons, and I'd spit out cash as if I had it to spare. The hardest slap in the face came when I checked the credit card statements that were in their names. Jessica had spent $50,000 last month. Rob, $40,000. On lavish dinners, designer, clothes, weekend getaways. They were living the high life with my money, while I was still going to the flea market for my clothes and cooking at home to save. The phone rang. It was Jessica. Hi, Mom, how are you? Her tone was sweet, cloying. Nothing like the voice that had shattered me an hour before, treating me like a nuisance. Hey, I need to talk to you about something important. Can you come over tomorrow? It's about the wedding. Of course, sweetheart, I'll be there. I answered her, with a voice as tender as it was fake, while an icy smile spread across my face. I knew perfectly well what she wanted to tell me. It wasn't about my seat at the ceremony. It was about the money to pay for it. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I spent it until 3 a.m. going over papers, contracts, receipts, transfers. My calculating mind wouldn't stop, adding up years of giving without receiving, of loving without being valued, but also scheming. Because if the years of negotiating with sharks taught me anything, it's that information is power. And I had plenty of that. The next day, I arrived at Jessica's house at 10 o'clock sharp, as we had agreed. I wore my simplest dress, the one she was embarrassed by, and carried my imitation leather bag, old but respectable. I wanted her to see me just as she thought I was, a weak, harmless old woman. Jessica greeted me with a hug that smelled of Chanel and lies. Mom, I'm so glad you came. Sit down for a bit. I made you some coffee, she said, serving me in one of those expensive porcelain cups I had bought her for her birthday. Part of a set that cost more than an office worker earns in a whole month. Everything in her house reeked of fake luxury, the furniture imported from Italy, the TV screen that looked like a wall, the decorative paintings adorning every corner, all of it bought with money that once came from my hands to show off to people who didn't even care about her. Look, Mom, I wanted to talk to you about the wedding, Jessica began, sitting down with that studied pose as if she were on a magazine cover. You know Matthew, and I want something super special, very elegant. His family is very refined, and there was that word again, refined, as if I were one of those things you hide in the closet so they don't clash with the rest. I smiled at her like the nice grandma she expected to see, though my blood was boiling inside. The thing is, everything has turned out to be more expensive than we expected, she continued with an actress's sigh. Just the venue costs $200,000, and that's not counting the food, the flowers, the music, the photographer. She paused for a long time, as if adding up the bill were torture. In total, we're talking about almost $800,000. $800,000. And she said it like she was ordering a donut at the bakery. I took a sip of coffee without losing my composure. Matthew has already contributed his share, of course, and his family is going to help too, she said without hesitating, and right there I knew she was lying, because I already knew Matthew's family hadn't contributed a dime. I knew because I took the time to find out. But we're still short a part, she said, lowering her tone. We need you to help us with what's missing. It's about $400,000. $400,000, like someone asking for cab fare. As she spoke, she fiddled with her engagement ring, that nervous tick she'd had since she was a child, when she wasn't telling the truth. I know it's a lot, Mom, but see it as an investment in my future. Matthew has important connections. This wedding could open a lot of doors for me. And her voice became syrupy, seductive, like someone selling snake oil to the gullible. I promise you, this will be the last time we ask you for anything big. After this, we'll fly solo. The last time, that phrase again, I knew it by heart. The last time I ask you for anything, Mom. The last investment. The last bit of help. All lies that I always swallowed because I clung to feeling useful, loved, indispensable. And Mom, she added, leaning towards me while gently taking my hands, those hands that looked like they were out of a magazine with their impeccable manicure. We haven't given you the official invitation yet, because we want to give you a surprise. The truth is, we're organizing something super intimate, very family-oriented, Jessica said with her sweetest expression. But I already knew that was a load of bull. I had seen the guest list forgotten on her coffee table, 250 people, including politicians, businessmen, influencers, and all those people she needed to appear successful. But her own mother, me, wasn't even a seat filler on that list. I just need you to confirm the money so I can book everything. The vendors are waiting, she insisted, squeezing my hands as if she truly felt vulnerable. I trust you, Mom. You've always been there for me. Yes, I was always there, but not in the way she imagined. I was there to pay for her expensive tastes, to support her ambitions, to cover her financial holes. But when I needed a hug, when the house felt like it was caving in on me on Sundays after Charles died, when the silence hurt, there was no one there. Of course, my love, I replied with that good mother smile I've polished over the years. You know you can always count on me for anything. Jessica sighed as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders, not knowing I already knew the whole story. You're the best mom in the world, she said with a kiss on my cheek that left the taste of hypocrisy. I swear this wedding is going to be perfect. Matthew is delighted with you. He always says he's lucky to have such a generous Matthew, the model fiancé, hadn't said more than 5 consecutive words to me in the 2 years he'd been with my daughter, the same one who grimaced every time I walked through his door, as if I were the stain on his pretty world. But of course, the money I shelled out didn't bother him at all. That, he received gladly. When I left Jessica's house, I drove straight to the office of Sal, my lifelong accountant, and one of the few sincere friends I still had left. Sal had been Charles's right-hand man, and after he died, he became my most loyal advisor, one of the few who never saw me as a clueless old lady. Teresa, what a pleasant surprise. Is everything all right? He greeted me with that warm smile that no one in my own house gave me anymore. His office smelled of old coffee and important papers, that aroma that made me feel at home, because it reminded me of the times when Charles and I built all this from scratch. Sal, I need to ask you a special favor, I said without beating around the bush. I want you to help me review every dollar I've transferred to my children in the last 5 years. Everything, without skipping a single cent. I sat across from him, folding my hands like the businesswoman I still am, even if no one notices anymore. Sal frowned with concern. Are you sure? Those numbers could be a hard blow. And of course, he knew my family better than they thought. He had been a silent witness to every one of their financial emergencies, to all those moments when, magically, their problems ended up being mine. I'm absolutely sure, I told Sal firmly, with that executive tone that hadn't left my lips in years. I want detailed numbers, dates, descriptions. And I need you to tell me exactly what my financial situation will be if I stop supporting them. Sal said nothing, sat down at his computer, and got to work with that efficiency I always admired in him. He spent 2 hours reviewing transfers, adding up deposits, dissecting accounts. I stayed there, motionless, watching a lifetime of generosity transform into cold, hard numbers that hurt more than any insult. In the end, he handed me a sheet of paper, and as I read it, I felt the air leave my body. In 5 years, Teresa, you've transferred $2,800,000 to Jessica and Rob, he said softly, and that's not including the assets in their names, the credit cards you're still paying, and the insurance policies where they are the beneficiaries. He looked at me with a mixture of pity and respect, as if he didn't know whether to hug me or congratulate me. You're an incredibly generous woman, he murmured. Generous, what an elegant word to disguise what had really been a chain of foolish acts disguised as love. $2,800,000, more than many people see in their entire working lives, given away like confetti to two people who today hide me out of shame. Now tell me, Sal, I asked without blinking, if tomorrow I stopped giving them a single dollar, how long do you think they'd last without collapsing? It was a question for which we both already had the answer. Jessica spends more than she earns every month. Her job barely covers the basics. And Rob, well, he earns better, but between the mortgage, Vanessa, and the luxuries, I give him 3 months at most before he cracks. 3 months, that was all their great independence, their arrogance, their perfect world without Mom would last. 3 months without my money, and everything would crumble for them. Having that data gave me power, yes, but also a deep sadness. I realized I hadn't raised children. I had raised financial parasites who didn't know how to function unless they were attached to my bank account. That night, alone in my living room, I made a decision. There was no turning back from. I poured myself a glass of the expensive wine Jessica had given me for my last birthday with my own money. Of course, settled into Charles's armchair, the one where he used to read me the financial news while we planned every step of our little empire. I took out my cell phone and dialed Stephen, Matthew's brother, whom I had researched enough to know he was a diplomat, a serious, respected man. If Jessica was so ashamed of her mother, it was time her future brother-in-law met the woman who was paying for her wedding. Good evening, Stephen, I said as soon as he answered. This is Teresa Miller, Jessica's mother. I apologize for calling so late, but I need to talk to you about something important related to your brother's wedding, I said with that soft tone of a lady who doesn't want to bother anyone but has an agenda. Stephen answered with a surprised voice, though polite, like a good diplomat. Of course, Mrs. Miller, how can I help you? Look, Stephen, I want to clarify a matter regarding the wedding expenses. My daughter mentioned that your family is also contributing financially, but I get the impression there was a misunderstanding. I'd like to make sure we're all on the same page. I said it, feigning the innocence of a slightly confused grandmother, the kind who just wants to avoid misunderstandings. There was an awkward pause on the other end of the line. Mrs. Miller, I honestly don't know what you're referring to. We haven't made any financial commitment. Matthew told us that you and Jessica already had everything sorted out. His tone was one of genuine surprise. Perfect. Another lie from Jessica. Oh, how strange. Well, don't worry, Stephen, I'll take care of everything, as always. I let that last phrase hang in the air, as if it had slipped out unintentionally. As always. Stephen took a few seconds and then blurted out, Excuse me for asking, ma'am, but have you been supporting Jessica financially for some time? And there it was, my opportunities served on a silver platter. Well, you know, as a mother, you do what you have to do for your children, right? Jessica has had her complications, the condo, the car, her studies in Europe, you know, family stuff. I paused deliberately, as if trying to appear humble but dropping the key piece of information. But don't worry, I have plenty of properties to cover anything that's needed. And right there, right then, I knew I had him. Properties. That word always makes people really listen. Stephen, with his shrewd politician's mind, surely understood immediately what that meant. You are very generous, ma'am, he said quietly. Matthew never told us Jessica needed financial support. Oh, Jessica is very proud, I replied with a little laugh. She doesn't like people to know she depends on her mother. But between us, Stephen, without my help, she couldn't maintain the lifestyle she leads. Each sentence was a bomb with a ticking timer. When I hung up, I dialed Rob directly. It was time to see if my younger son, the one who was always softer, more manageable, could still be rescued from the wreckage. Mom, is everything okay? It's really late, he said, his voice half asleep and tense. Jessica had probably already told him about my call. Rob, sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something serious. It's about your sister's wedding, I said, settling into my armchair as if I were about to give a presidential address. Jessica asked me for a large sum of money for the party, but there's something that's been on my mind. What is it, Mom? Now he sounded wide awake, alert. Well, I've been thinking a lot about what's next, about my future, about what will happen to me when I'm older. You all have your lives made, your families, your responsibilities, I said, letting my voice crack just a little, as if a long truth were escaping me. Mom, what are you saying? You're perfectly fine, Rob replied, but his tone didn't fool me. Discomfort was seeping through every word because he knew exactly where this was going. Yes, I'm fine now, I answered calmly, but tell me, what's going to happen in 5 years, or in 10? I don't want to end up being a burden to you. I paused, for a moment, letting the silence weigh on him. I've been thinking about selling some properties and moving to a smaller place, something I can manage on my own, without depending on anyone. On the other end of the phone, the silence became dense, like when you don't know if what you just heard is serious. I knew that in that instant, Rob was doing mental calculations, figuring out what he would lose if I became independent, his endless loans, the houses he hoped to inherit, the help he shamelessly asked for, the financial safety net I represented. Mom, don't say that. We'll never leave you alone. You'll always be part of the family, he said with a forced sweetness that couldn't quite cover his fear. Oh, Rob, that's so nice to hear, really, because sometimes I feel like I'm in the way, like with Jessica's wedding, I blurted out, leaving it hanging in the air. Papacito, what's wrong with Jessica's wedding? He asked, trying to sound relaxed, but I know that tone well. It was the same one he used as a child when he broke something and didn't know how to confess. Well, she told me, it's going to be something very intimate, very small, just for the closest people. And well, I understand. I'm no longer part of those sophisticated events. I don't fit in anymore, I said, with that tone somewhere between resigned and martyred that every mother masters I could hear him swallow. Mom, I didn't know Jessica told you that. There must be some misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, my love, I replied. Jessica was very clear. She says, Matthews, family is very refined in that I'm a woman who doesn't know how to behave in society. Every word was a direct stab at his conscience. Mom, that's not true. You're not there. He trailed off, unable to finish, because he knew that anything he said would be an unsustainable lie. It's okay, Rob, I told him calmly. I understand how things are. You've moved up in the world. You're on another level now. It's normal for you to be ashamed of your mother who shops at flea markets. I let a good while pass before speaking again. I just hope that when I move and sell everything, you'll understand I'm doing it to give you your space, so you can shine without my shadow hanging over you. The line went dead silent. The silence lasted almost a minute. Rob was there, on the other side, digesting what I had just told him, watching his comfortable world crumble with just one phone call. He knew that if I kept my word, they would have to learn to survive on what they actually earned, without my checks, without my properties, without the safety net that was me. Mom, please don't do anything impulsive. Let me talk to Jessica. I'm sure this is a huge misunderstanding, Rob said, his voice trembling slightly, while in the background Vanessa could be heard asking what was wrong, with that shrill, worried tone she always uses when she feels her wallet is threatened. I promise you, we'll sort this all out. I don't want you to fight because of me, my love. If Jessica thinks it's better for me not to be there, well, I respect that. It's her special day, I replied with that resigned, calm, motherly tone, as if it pained me to accept reality. But inside, a slow smile was forming. Rob was slowly falling apart, and that meant only one thing. The plan was going full steam ahead. Mom, we never wanted to make you feel bad. Let me talk to her first thing in the morning. Just don't do anything yet, okay? He said, his tone now pleading. All right, son, but I've already made an important decision. Today I told Jessica that yes, I will give her the money for the wedding, $400,000. It will be my farewell gift before I start a simpler life. That lie slipped from my lips smoothly, like poisoned honey, while on the other end of the phone, Rob fell completely silent, trying to understand that his sister had asked him for that amount without telling him anything. They had always had this silent complicity, an alliance based on taking advantage of me without stepping on each other's toes. But this broke the rules of the game. $400. Jessica asked you for that much? He asked, his voice no longer hiding the feeling of betrayal. Yes, for the venue, the catering, the flowers. You know, she wants it to be a dream wedding. But, well, I suppose since you're already married, you don't need anything, right? I blurted out with false innocence, a well-calculated little lie, because Rob and Vanessa always found something to ask me for money for, whether the kitchen needed renovating, the SUV broke down, or Vanessa wanted a facial treatment in Miami. Mom, we have expenses too. Vanessa is expecting another baby, and we need to expand the house, he said, just as I expected. Vanessa's pregnant. How exciting, I exclaimed, feigning a joy I didn't feel, because just last week I had seen her posting pictures on Instagram, toasting with wine at a dinner with friends. Of course I'll help you with that too. After all, you do make me part of your life, I said with a sweetness laced with venom. That last sentence was the masterstroke. Rob understood the play perfectly. Jessica got the money but erased me from her life. He included me but got nothing. An equation that didn't suit him at all. I hung up with a satisfaction I hadn't felt in years, because for the first time in a long time, I had control of the board. My children had gotten used to using me, to seeing me as a manipulative old woman, but they forgot that I was a businesswoman before I was a mother, that I know all the pressure tactics by heart, every trick to move pieces unnoticed. And so, the next day, at 7 in the morning sharp, the show began. Jessica called me, livid. Mom, what did you say to Rob? He can't even look at me. He says I'm selfish, that I'm leaving him out of everything. Jessica shrieked from the other end of the phone, completely beside herself, which was very rare for her, as she was always colder than marble. Good morning, sweetheart. I don't understand why Rob is so upset. I just told him your wedding is going to be beautiful, I replied in the voice of a clueless grandma, the kind who doesn't know why everyone is yelling like crazy. You told him I asked you for $400,000, and that I'm leaving him out of the most important event of my life, she screamed, losing her temper. Well, but it's true, isn't it? You asked me for that money just yesterday, I replied with a well-calculated pause, and then added with false ingenuousness, and about Rob. He just asked me if he was going to be at the wedding, and I told him it was only for important people. Thought he already knew. I heard Jessica mutter a curse under her breath. Mom, Rob is my brother. Of course he's invited to the wedding. Oh, what a relief, my love. So, when you talked about important people, you were only referring to me. I get it now, I answered with a wounded voice, all sweet, but sharp as a razor. I didn't mean that, Mom. Of course you're important, she replied, but her voice broke, because she couldn't find a way to justify why her own mother wasn't important enough to be on the guest list. Don't worry, my girl, I got the message loud and clear. That's precisely why yesterday I decided to simplify my life. I spoke to a real estate agent about selling some properties. If you don't need me as a mother anymore, then at least I won't be a financial burden, I said, letting those words burn into her like acid. You're going to sell properties. What properties? She asked with a voice that no longer feigned anything. It was pure fear, disguised as curiosity. Well, I'm starting with the beach house, then I'll move on to the downtown apartments. Stephen gave me some great advice yesterday on how to sell without losing value, I said, as if commenting on something trivial. You talked to Stephen, Matthew's brother, she blurted out, almost in a whisper of a panic attack. Yes, a very decent young man. He told me his family isn't putting any money into the wedding. That Matthew told them you and I had everything under control. I paused for a long time. He was very interested in my properties. He seemed impressed. And at that moment, Jessica hung up without saying goodbye. I knew she was going to run and call Matthew to ask him what the hell he had told his family about the Miller family finances. For the next 3 days, my cell phone didn't have a moment's peace. It was like watching dominoes fall one by one. First, it was Rob, very polite, inviting me to lunch with him and Vanessa to, according to him, clear things up. Then it was Jessica, with a tone so sweet it almost made me laugh, telling me she wanted us to go for coffee to plan the wedding together. Then Rob, again, offering to take me to the doctor because he'd noticed I'd been very stressed lately. But the call that shook me the most came on Thursday night. It was Chloe, my 16-year-old granddaughter, Rob and Vanessa's daughter. And her voice sounded different, with a firmness I hadn't known she possessed. Grandma, can I come see you tomorrow after school? I need to talk to you, she said bluntly. Chloe was always different, the only one in the family who seemed to have inherited my nose for business and that knack for spotting hypocrisy disguised as good intentions. Of course, my love, come whenever you like, I answered without thinking. Chloe was my weak spot, the only one who loved me unconditionally, without calculations. The next day, she arrived in her school uniform, her backpack slung over one shoulder, and a seriousness on her face that made me see myself reflected in her when I was her age. She sat in the kitchen, refused the juice I offered her, and got straight to the point. Grandma, my parents have been talking about you a lot. They argue in hushed tones, change the subject when I walk into the room, she said with those big eyes that were Charles's, that saw everything. My mom is obsessed with checking bank statements, and my dad has an anguished look on his face all day. And what do you think about all this, sweetheart? I asked with genuine curiosity, wanting to know the opinion of the only person who wasn't playing a role in this family tragedy. I think they're afraid you'll stop supporting them, she blurted out, looking me straight in the eye, without filters. And I don't think any words had ever hit me so hard before. Chloe, as a girl, clearly understood everything her parents pretended not to see. Grandma, I've been watching for as long as I can remember. I always see how Dad and Aunt Jessica ask you for money, how Mom starts planning expensive purchases right before coming to visit you, how everyone changes their attitude when they need you for something, she continued with a maturity that made me feel both pride and sadness. And I also see how you give them everything without asking for anything in return. That's what a mother does. A grandmother. I tried to defend what I knew deep down was a chain of mistakes. No, Grandma, a mom teaches her children to stand on their own 2 feet. A grandmother loves them, but she doesn't turn them into freeloaders, she replied, taking my hands firmly. My mom told me yesterday that if you sell the properties, we'll have to move to a smaller place, as if it's the end of the world to have to live on what my dad actually earns. Her brutal honesty left me speechless. I had raised 2 children who didn't know the cost of earning $1 because I never forced them to. And now they were repeating the same cycle with their own children. Chloe, did you know your Aunt Jessica didn't invite me to her wedding? I asked, because I needed to know how much the only honest voice in this story knew. Chloe nodded slowly, sadly. Mom told me as if it were the most normal thing in the world, that Aunt Jessica wants something elegant and that you don't fit in. When I asked her how she could leave out her own mother, she told me I didn't understand because I was too young. Chloe squeezed my hands tightly. But I do understand, Grandma. I know they want you far away because you don't pretend, because you're real, because everything you have, you earned by working, and they're dying of shame because they can't say the same. In that instant, seeing my granddaughter firmly defend the dignity my own children trampled on without shame, I made the definitive decision. Chloe was the only one who deserved to inherit what I had built, the only one who carried my true principles in her blood. Chloe, I need you to help me with something very important, but you'll have to keep secrets, even from your parents, I said with a voice that was no longer that of a tender grandmother, but of a businesswoman with a clear strategy. What do you need, Grandma? She asked, leaning towards me with those eyes alight with intelligence and loyalty. I want you to help me organize a family meeting for this Saturday night. Everyone present. Tell them I have something very important to announce about my future, I said, an icy smile forming on my face, one I hadn't felt in years. And I need you to bring your cell phone and record everything that happens, I added without hesitation. Chloe looked at me as if she knew something big was coming, with a mixture of amazement and pride. What are you going to do, Grandma? Justice, my child, I replied. After 64 years of life, it's time to serve the dish that's always best served cold. I took her hands and added, and you are going to witness a woman reclaim what she should never have lost, her dignity. That night, after Chloe left, I locked myself in my study and fine-tuned every detail of the plan, organizing bank transfers, printing account statements, archiving screenshots of chats, call recordings, everything classified with surgical precision in folders labeled with each of my children's names. On Saturday night, punctual as never before, they all started arriving at my house at 8 o'clock sharp, just as I asked. Jessica was first, dressed as if for a gala. Her face a mask of nervousness disguised as glamour, carrying an expensive bouquet of flowers she had surely bought with my money. Rob and Vanessa arrived 5 minutes later, with Chloe walking behind them, her cell phone ready and hidden in her jacket pocket. "Mom, it's so good you brought us together. We really needed a family dinner," Jessica said, giving me a kiss on the cheek with those lips painted with falsehood. "Yes, there are some decisions I need to share with you," I replied calmly, motioning for them to take a seat in the living room. I prepared coffee and cookies. Like in the old days, when we still thought we were a united family, Vanessa settled on the couch, checking her phone every 30 seconds, as if waiting for someone to rescue her. Rob kept fidgeting with his watch, tense, looking at everyone but me. Jessica smiled, too much. That smile she only put on when she was about to ask for something disguised as affection. Only Chloe looked calm, sitting on the armchair in the corner with those lively eyes of hers, observing everything as if she had already understood it all before it even began. "Well, as you know, lately I've been thinking a lot about what's next for me, about what will happen when I'm older." I began serving coffee in those elegant little cups Jessica chose last year, as if it were a favor. "And I've also thought a lot about you, about your paths, about everything you've achieved." Jessica leaned a little towards me, with that syrupy voice she uses when she wants to regain control. "Mom, you're perfect. You don't need to think about that yet." "Of course I do, Jessica. At my age, you can't live believing everything stays the same," I replied and took a sip of coffee, enjoying the taste of the moment more than the drink itself. "That's why I've made some important decisions about what I have and what's to come." Suddenly, the living room turned into a freezer. Rob stopped fidgeting with his watch, as if he'd realized he could no longer measure the time he had left in that comfort. Vanessa looked up from her phone as if she finally understood something was slipping away. Jessica didn't lose her smile, but the tendons in her neck stood out as if her skin knew something was wrong. "First, I want to tell you about a very interesting conversation I had with Stephen, Matthew's brother," I said, looking directly at Jessica, who turned white as a sheet. "It turns out he had no idea you expected his family to contribute money for the wedding." "Mom, that was a misunderstanding." Jessica tried to justify herself, but I calmly raised my hand. "Let me finish, sweetheart." Stephen was quite curious when I told him about all my properties and how I've been supporting my family for years. I smiled with an icy sweetness. He found it very noble of me to continue supporting adult children with professions and degrees. Rob cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "Mom, we're not freeloaders. We work, we earn our own money." "Really, Rob?" I asked, pulling out the first folder I had ready since Thursday. "According to my accounts, in the last 5 years, I've transferred $1,200,000 to you. You earn $40,000 a month as a lawyer. Without that support, you couldn't even pay your mortgage." Rob froze. Vanessa shot him a look that was a mix of fear and annoyance. She clearly had no idea the extent of their dependence. "And you, Jessica," I said, pulling out the next folder. "In that same period, you've received $1,600,000. What you earn as an architect isn't enough for a condo in Beverly Hills, or a BMW, or trips to Europe." Jessica tried to maintain her composure. "Mom, those were loans, investments in our future." I laughed, but it was a dry, hollow laugh. "Loans, Jessica, show me one document, just one, that states how much and when you are going to pay me back. A single piece of paper that says you owe me anything." Silence settled like a ghost among them. No such document existed, because they never planned on repaying me a single dollar. "But the most curious thing," I continued softly, "is that after giving you millions, you've decided I'm not good enough to be in your elegant version of life." I took out my cell phone and put on speakerphone the recording where Jessica's voice could be clearly heard, talking about her wedding, her cold tone filling the room like a slap. "Obviously I'm not inviting Mom. Imagine the embarrassment with Matthew's family." And as soon as those words came out, Jessica jumped up as if the armchair had stung her. "Mom, did you record me?" she asked, her eyes wide, to which I replied with icy calm, "I didn't record anything, Jessica. You simply forgot to hang up when you were talking to Vanessa." A lie told so smoothly it seemed true. "I listened for 20 minutes while you said I was a burden, an embarrassment," and then Rob intervened, trying to regain some control. "Jessica, is that true? Did you really say that?" But she was already stammering. "It wasn't like that. I was stressed. My head was in the wedding." Her usual confidence, disappearing word by word. "What worried you was making a good impression on your boyfriend's family," I told her. sharp as a razor. That same family that hasn't contributed a dime to that $800,000 wedding. I raised my voice slightly without losing my elegance. A wedding that I'm going to pay for completely, but to which I'm not even invited. And at that moment Vanessa dared to speak, softly, trembling mother-in-law. There must be a reason, something that hasn't been said. The reason is simple, Vanessa, I shot back without blinking. My children have lived like rich people thanks to me, but they're ashamed to acknowledge the woman who breaks her back to support them. I stood up slowly, feeling a strength I hadn't felt in decades, and that's why I've made clear decisions about my future and yours. I took a deep breath. As of this moment, all credit cards in your names are canceled, all monthly transfers are suspended, and all properties listed as yours returned to my control. My voice was hard as steel, each word measured with surgical precision. Jessica jumped to her feet. Mom, you can't do that. I have payments, commitments. Of course I can, Jessica, I told her, without raising my voice. Those cards are mine. That money is mine. Those houses too. I only put them in your names for tax purposes, but legally they never stopped being mine. I opened a thick folder full of documents. Sal already has everything ready. It takes effect first thing Monday morning. Rob looked at me, his face a picture of collapse. Mom, we have a mortgage. Chloe, expenses, responsibilities, the life you have. Rob, I built with my work, with my sweat, with every cent I put in. But now it's your turn to learn to build a life with what you earn yourselves, I replied, looking him straight in the eye, with a coldness I could no longer hide. Vanessa was crying silently. Jessica was pacing like a caged animal. Rob had his head in his hands, and only Chloe remained, serene, discreetly recording everything with her cell phone. This is emotional blackmail. Jessica screamed as if her throat were on fire. You're punishing us for a private conversation. This is pure emotional blackmail. My laugh came out dry, sharp as a razor. Jessica, you call me a blackmailer while you plan to marry with my money at a wedding I'm not even invited to, I said, without blinking, and I saw the color drain from her face. Matthew is going to cancel everything. His family will think we're moochers, she screamed, on the verge of collapse. And I, without losing my cool, replied, maybe you should have thought of that before calling me an embarrassment in front of those same people. I settled back into the armchair, enjoying every second of her emotional breakdown. But don't worry, Jessica, I have a proposal. And then all eyes were fixed on me, with that desperate gleam of someone seeing the last floating plank in a shipwreck. You can keep the wedding money, the $400,000 you asked for, but there's only one condition. I paused for a long time, like in good speeches. I want to sit at the main table, and I want you to proudly introduce me as the woman who raised you, who paid for your education, the one who made everything you have possible, and say it in front of everyone with your head held high. Jessica paled as if I had just asked her to humiliate herself in public. I can't do that, Matthew's family, she murmured, trembling. Then there's no money, and without money, there's no wedding, I replied, shrugging. You choose, sweetheart, your fake image or your marriage. And at that moment, Rob tried to intervene, already out of energy. Mom, please, think about it. We're your family, your only children, my only children who hide me, who lie to me, who use me like an ATM, I said, standing up, walking slowly towards Chloe. But don't worry, I'm not completely insensitive. I put my hand on my granddaughter's shoulder. Chloe isn't to blame for having parents who live off my bank account. I looked at the girl tenderly. You will continue to be my sole heir. Everything will be yours when I'm gone. And I saw her eyes fill with emotion. And at 18, you'll have access to an educational fund I've created just for you. Chloe hugged me tightly. Thank you, Grandma. But I just want you to be happy. I will be, my love. For the first time in many years, I replied with a real smile, while looking at my children with that cold pain that one no longer cries over. Next week, I'm moving. I bought a beautiful condo in Palm Springs, overlooking the lake, with a terrace and everything. Chloe can visit me whenever she wants. You're leaving, Rob said, as if he couldn't understand. And this house? I'm selling it. I already have a buyer, I replied with a satisfaction that warmed my chest. It's a young couple. They'll fill it with life and true affection. Jessica slumped onto the sofa, as if the floor had been pulled out from under her. Mom, you can't tear our family apart like this. I didn't break anything. Jessica, You broke it the day you decided my money was worth more than my company. And I walked towards the door with my head held high. The meeting is over. You have until Wednesday to get your things out of here. 3 months later, I was sitting on the terrace of my new home, a cup of coffee in hand, watching the sun rise over the lake. Chloe came to see me every weekend, telling me about her plans to study business administration, her dreams, and her future, a future that, finally, didn't depend on a lie. She was the only one who had truly inherited my business instincts. Jessica ended up canceling the wedding. And Matthew left her without a goodbye, as soon as he found out the whole truth about the financial theater she was living in. Rob and Vanessa were forced to sell the house and move into a modest apartment. Both had to take part-time jobs to make ends meet. They never apologized, never admitted their guilt, but they also never came near me asking for a single cent again. I found peace in simple things, in the quiet mornings by the lake, in the afternoons reading novels that had been gathering dust on my bookshelf for years, in the nights dreaming of Chloe's business future. I learned the most valuable lesson of all, that true affection cannot be bought with money, and that dignity is the one thing that should never be put up for sale. My children chose luxury over love. I chose my tranquility over their dependence, and I didn't look back for a single day. 2 years had passed since that night that changed everything, and one ordinary afternoon, a Tuesday, while I was watering my plants on the terrace, my cell phone rang. The name that appeared on the screen unsettled me. Rob. "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice different, more subdued, more real. "I know that after everything, I have no right to call you, but I needed to talk to you." I sat in my favorite chair, the one I bought with my own effort, without consulting anyone. "Go on, Rob." "Mom, Vanessa and I are getting divorced," he said in a broken tone. "It turns out that when your money ran out, she discovered she didn't love the man I am, but the lifestyle you gave us." I felt neither anger nor relief, just that feeling that everything falls under its own weight. "I'm sorry, Rob." "You're not sorry, Mom, and it's okay that you're not," he replied after a long pause. "These past 2 years have been the hardest, but also the most real. For the first time, I had to look at myself in the mirror without using your money as a disguise." I heard the background murmur of a coffee shop. He was probably in a public place, trying to gather the courage to make this call for hours. "And who are you, Rob?" I asked with sincere curiosity. "I'm an average lawyer who thought he was entitled to your hard work. I'm a dad who taught his daughter that money is asked for, not earned. I'm a man who was ashamed of the bravest woman he knows." His voice was cracking, but he didn't stop. "I'm a coward who allowed his sister to humiliate you because it benefited me." His words were daggers that, for the first time, cut where they needed to. "Mom, I'm not calling you for money. I'm not calling you to forgive me, because I know I haven't earned it. I'm calling because I finally understood what you did for us." Rob took a deep breath before letting it out. "You forced us to grow up," and I remained silent, letting those words settle within me while outside, like every afternoon. That elderly couple took their routine walk hand in hand by the lake. And whenever I saw them, I wondered if that's what real love looked like. The kind that doesn't need adornments or conditions. "Rob, how's Chloe?" I finally asked, because that was the only question that really mattered to me. "She's incredible, Mom," he replied with a pride that was evident in his voice. "She got straight A's this semester, and she already got a part-time job at an accounting firm. She says she wants to learn what it costs to earn money before inheriting yours." And he let out a laugh without resentment, with that warm tone I hadn't heard from him since he was a child. "She's just like you. She has that good stubbornness, that sharp mind for business." "And Jessica?" I asked with some hesitation, not knowing if I wanted to know the truth or continue ignoring it. "Jessica, he said with a long sigh. "She now works at a small architecture firm, lives in a simple apartment, and drives a car that's on its last legs. For the first time in years, she looks real, but she's also full of ingratitude. At me, at everyone." "And why so much anger?" I asked without sarcasm. "Because she realized that whole supposed exclusive world she lived in was a house of cards, propped up by your wallet that when the fancy restaurants and expensive gifts ran out, so did the friendships she boasted so much about," he explained with a resigned coldness. "And Matthew married an heiress 6 months after leaving her." I got up from my chair and walked to the edge of the terrace. The sun was beginning to set, and painted the lake water with a gold that always took my breath away. "Rob, why are you telling me all this?" I asked without turning around. "Because I want you to know that everything you did worked. You broke us, yes, but it was so we could rebuild ourselves." His voice no longer trembled. It sounded clear, decisive, and even though Jessica still doesn't understand it, I do. And I want you to know that I'm trying to become someone better. "And Vanessa, how's the divorce going?" I asked without much interest, just to close the chapter. Rob let out a bitter laugh. "She already has a new beau, an older businessman who supports her like I supported her with your money. Some people just never learn." We were silent for several minutes, me, watching the sun dissolve on the horizon, and him, surely, looking at his now cold coffee cup in some roadside cafe. "Mom, there's something else I need to tell you," Rob said, taking a deep breath, as if what was coming weighed more than everything else. "The day you turned 66, Chloe asked me why we hadn't called to wish you a happy birthday, and honestly, I didn't know what to tell her. Your birthday passed in total silence. Only Chloe arrived with a cake she made herself, and a handmade card with drawings and words worth more than any expensive gift. And for me, that was more than enough. I didn't need calls, Rob, or empty speeches. Yes, you did need them, Mom, and we needed to make them too. But our pride got the better of us. Our ego won. We were too stuck in our arrogance to admit we missed you," Rob said, and then fell silent, letting those words hang in the air like a confession. "I missed you, but not as the usual source of money, but as the mom you were." And it was then that I felt the wetness on my cheeks and understood I was crying, not from sadness, but from something more tangled. A mixture of relief and something that almost seemed like hope. "Rob, what do you expect from this call?" I asked. My heart paused. "Nothing, Mom, I expect nothing," he replied with that sincerity that only appears when you have nothing left to lose. "I just wanted you to know that the man you shaped is still here, hidden beneath all the crap I accumulated all these years." His voice broke a little, but he didn't stop. "And I also wanted you to know that I'm proud to be Teresa Miller's son. That woman who built everything with her own hands without owing anything to anyone." When I hung up the phone, I remained motionless, watching the sun slowly fade over the lake, as if giving me permission to finally release the weight of the years. And for the first time since that night when everything changed, I felt something that closely resembled hope, as if maybe, just maybe, the love that money can't buy could be found in the silences, left by what money can no longer sustain. If I've learned anything after all this, it's that loving doesn't mean letting yourself be trampled on, that being a mother doesn't mean sacrificing your dignity to keep others comfortable. I learned that helping is fine, but losing yourself along the way to please others is not. True love isn't shown through gifts or signed checks, but with respect, presence, and gratitude. Today, more than ever, I want to tell you this: setting boundaries is also an act of love towards yourself. And now, I ask you, with all my heart, if you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have had the courage to cut ties, to start over, to let go? Or would you have continued to endure so as not to break the image of a perfect family? I really want to know. I want to hear what you think, because your perspective matters too. Thank you for accompanying me this far. May God always bless you with light, clarity, and people who truly love you.